Well, for more on how artificial intelligence is reshaping the arts, I spoke with Cherie Hu. Cherie is a music business journalist. I began by asking her when technology made its way into this industry.
Actually, artificial intelligence in art is nothing new. I know in the classical music world, people have been experimenting with applying mathematical formulas to composing music, algorithms to composing music as early as the 50s or the 60s. But in terms of really getting that art into the mainstream and getting onto things like Spotify playlists, it's only really been in the past year or so that it's gotten that public.
The first question that comes to everyone's mind is art created by AI really art?
That's a really good question. So in the context of music, for instance, I guess whether the question of whether a song created by an AI is just as good as a song created by a human assumes that we only judge art by the end product, right? Like by the song that comes out. When in reality, if you think about a musician, a huge celebrity, or a visual artist, we invest as much in the person and as much in the story and the context as we do in the end work. So it's all an open debate about how you define art and how you define creativity. But I think we're at a stage where the way we value art is not just in the song, and that's one huge reason why I think AI cannot compete at this moment with human creators.
So you mentioned the word value. That's another thing I was thinking. How does one determine the value of AI art? Let's say, you know, a painting by Da Vinci, okay, Mona Lisa. We look at that and we say, that's a one of a kind.
Yeah, the value of an AI art. That's super interesting because I know there are huge tech companies like Google and Facebook that have really big AI research arms, and they're all investing in music actually in those departments. But I have talked with someone on the Google Magenta team, which is responsible for all the creative AI, and they're saying that they really don't have a benchmark for success just because this is so early, and music and art, it's so subjective. And one benchmark that people have used in the past is this sort of quasi-Turing test in the sense of, can this AI convincingly create art just as a human would, such that the average listener wouldn't be able to differentiate? And so that's been one benchmark for value. But then again, I think it all goes back to the context and the story and how much people really believe in the wider brand and the wider vision behind a piece of music. It's not just the end product too.
Let's talk about some of these streaming services. You mentioned Spotify, for example, using software to compose music to avoid royalties for humans, possibly. One report that I read says that tracks have been played 500 million times, which ordinarily would have cost Spotify $3 million in payments. Are they getting away with something here?
That's a really interesting question, especially because one of the foremost researchers from Sony, who was experimenting with AI-generated music and creating albums around that, is now working at Spotify and trying to make creator tools. And nothing has been disclosed yet, but I will say for sure that Spotify and other streaming services have an incentive to invest more in that just financially, because as of right now, 70, even 80% of revenue sometimes per year has to be paid back to rights holders and to record labels. And from Spotify's perspective, that I don't see any chance of them turning a profit with that type of model in the future, also in the long term. So just thinking about how they can bring some of that creation in-house, whether through humans or through artificial intelligence, which is hypothetically much cheaper to maintain, I think there definitely is an incentive there and something that they're looking into.
If I'm not mistaken, U.S. law does not allow for AI to actually own a copyright. So we will see more labels investing in AI software, you think?
Absolutely. And you're seeing a lot of music-focused startup accelerators in the U.S. like Techstars. They have a new music program that's been around for 2 years, and a disproportionate amount of funding, both from labels and from outside traditional VCs and institutional investors, have been going precisely to companies that are experimenting with AI-generated music and really making that into a product for the wider public. And absolutely, I think labels, they've definitely learned from the pain and the suffering that they experienced from Napster and the onset of piracy, that they really need to foresee their own disruption and make the right investment moves and acquisition moves accordingly. So I know there are definitely conversations on the investment and acquisition side for labels and AI music.